I'm Kevin Power, and this is SaskScapes, the podcast featuring stories of arts, culture, and heritage in Saskatchewan. Welcome to episode 73 of SaskScapes with my guest, Dominga Robinson. This is a very interesting conversation you're about to hear. It's a story about cultural and personal identity. A conversation about the perceptions within races and between races. You see, Dominga is fortunate enough to have a mix of two very different backgrounds, culturally speaking, and is no stranger to the judgments of some people who feel they need to define her by appearances, specifically skin color. But it's also very interesting to hear Dominga's experience within her families of origin on both her mother and father's side. Dominga's mom was part of the 60 Scoop, and as you'll hear, became an accomplished, strong, and proud First Nations woman. And it's obvious that this strength has been passed on to Dominga. Dominga has an impressive background within the nonprofit sector of our province, including the Culture and Ceremonies Manager of the 2014 North American Indigenous Games. That had to have been a huge job. It's clear that she's taken on who she is and poured that passion into her work, volunteerism, and her love of theater. The topic is a serious one, but I think you'll agree Dominga's infectious laugh makes it very entertaining. Dominga Robinson, here we are finally together on a brisk Regina day.
Gotta love fall.
So I've been tipped off to the fact that you have a very interesting background and a lot of very, very interesting stories, but I have not been given any details, so I'm going to rely on you to fill in some of the blanks for me. So this really is a blank canvas on which you can paint whatever you...
an area that you, someone tipped you off that she'd be great to talk about this or anything?
No. So I'm just going to rely on you to take me through some of the journey that has been your life. So, yeah, I know. I can see your face like, wow, where to begin?
Well, that's why I say
right.
I have a bazillion different kinds of stories in my life.
That's good. Yeah, let's start at the beginning. Tell me where you were born, and is that where you grew up?
Not at all. I was born on an Air Force base in California, and it was called Edwards Air Force Base. That was... I don't want to say the year, but 1979. I don't mind. I own my age at this year. I was born on... Oh, actually, it was called Travis. Sorry, I apologize. I mixed it up with another Air Force base we lived on. But as a kid, I moved around a lot. My mom was in the military. That's kind of how I ended up. So it's a little unique even in that, that my mother was a product of the 60s Scoop. And throughout that her raising up and becoming an adult, she ran away to the States. And at that time, they still recognized the Jay Treaty, so she was able to go down there. And she met a man and was rebelling at 19, and she married him. And he was in the military and got stationed in Hawaii. Now, this marriage was not a good one. Mm-hmm. It was spontaneous. It was not, wasn't well established. And she ended up in a bad place with him. So she kind of felt trapped. Like she couldn't get out of this. How does she get away? She's in Hawaii. How do you get away from this at this point? Yeah. So she told him that she was going to join the military too. So that's kind of how she ended up joining the military.
Wow.
Was to get away from
to get away. To escape from love, I'll join the military.
Yeah, and she made him think that, they'll be stationed together and they'll live their lives happily ever after she gets her training and goes off and can contribute. She never came back and met my dad in boot camp.
Okay.
So then there comes along me unexpected and unplanned.
And this is in California.
This is all in California.
Okay,
By
right.
then she gotten stationed in, the boot camp was in Illinois, and then got stationed into California where I was born.
Right.
And then I spent most of my childhood till about the time I was 8 living in California, except for 1 year where my mom did go off to Korea when I was about 5, and she didn't want me starting school over there because that would have just thrown me off for the rest of my academic career.
Right.
And it's just not safe. She was on the line between North and South Korea. You don't take your 5-year-old there. So she left me actually in Saskatchewan with her foster family.
So she was born in Saskatchewan.
She's born in Regina.
And so she was scooped up from here, and then and she had her adoptive family was here in Saskatchewan?
Just down the road, which was even weirder.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And just down the road, and you think that they could have contact, yet they weren't allowed.
Yeah, that's about it. And she was what, 4 or 5 when that happened to her. Yeah. So she had the memories. I'm very grateful. Oh goodness, thank goodness she remembered where she came from.
Right.
Because we were able to come back, and that was part of what the driving force in moving us back up here was to reconnect with the family and all of that. But like I said, she left me here for a year, and I spent my summers. I grew up with a whole different family than everyone else. I grew up with this family named the Myers in Mooseman. There was 12 cousins. I was in the middle of them and somewhere, and we were just a close knit family.
Not a First Nations family.
No, not at all. So it was a very different upbringing. I grew up, around a lot of racism there. But I don't have any, they weren't racist. It was the community that would be like that. And I mean, there were twinges of like this assimilation type of thing where they were still trying to assimilate us, and anytime my mom tried to reconnect back with her original family, there was almost a resentment on their part that she would try to do that, that she, would try to embrace those roots. They didn't understand it. They didn't encourage it. And eventually that's what kind of broke the relationships off between our two families, is we don't really associate. I don't really have a relationship with those folks anymore.
With the adoptive family.
With the adoptive family.
So, and you have very much a relationship with your mother's birth family.
That's correct. Right. Yeah. They're my cousins and family now. I don't really think of those people as, it's kind of hard not to, because all my childhood memories, my closest, my relationships that I built as a youth were with those folks, They were the most important people in the world, So to have that switch, I didn't understand what was happening when she was pulling away, and I was confused by it.
Right.
And then it all clicked when she got pregnant with my sister at 15, because that was the deal breaker, because they were not accepting of that. They were not encouraging of that, and that was it. It was like, well, I'm not going to bring my daughter around, people who are going to think that she shouldn't exist or anything. And I mean, we tried, but it was just too, it was just too different. Too much changed. We'd reconnected back. She'd learned too much. It just couldn't go back. We couldn't go back anymore.
What was your dad's background, ethnic background?
My dad is Jamaican. He lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and my mom and him, it's super funny because it was reverse racism as to why they didn't end up together. Was his family felt she was too light-skinned to be a part of the family, and discouraged him from pursuing anything further with her. And then she got scared that they were going to try and take me away from her. Adoptee issues, right? Scooper issues.
Yeah, right.
Right. So she was worried about that. So I had just found this out last year, actually, that my mom told a really wicked lie to my dad, saying that she had sent me up here to live, and I was no longer with her, and that there was no way he could have access. There was no way they could get me. she was that scared, I think, back then of them taking me away from her, that she lied. And so he's like, oh, remember that time you were up in Canada for those couple of years when you were a kid? That never happened, Dad. I'm sorry. But I went to visit a couple times, but...
Well, did he get it?
No.
Did he ever fully grasp your mother's demons?
No. Not at all. I don't even think he really knew about it. I don't even think he knew. I don't think she would have.
She didn't talk about it a lot?
No, I didn't even know we were First Nations until I was 10, 11, 12 years old when she started to reconnect back. I had no idea.
Wow. So when you were growing up spending time with your mom's adoptive family, what was your reaction to any kind of racism that you would have been exposed to toward First Nations people? Hey, it's Kevin. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder that the SaskScapes podcast is available for free on your favorite podcast app, or you can stream it from your browser. Check out the show notes for the link. On the SaskScapes homepage, you'll notice something new under the logo called SaskScapes Plus. You can't miss it. There's a big button saying support with a heart icon next to it. I'd love it if you could click on that button and help keep this podcast series going. When SaskScapes launched in May 2014, it was the first podcast in the province celebrating arts, culture, and heritage. In fact, you'd have been pretty hard-pressed to find any Saskatchewan podcasts. So I'd like to think that we paved the way. It's been because of your support that this podcast is now in its 9th year. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
I didn't get a lot of that. I got for my Jamaican side.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was my first racial experience.
Okay, you were ostracized for your Jamaican heritage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was initially where it all started. I mean, I would have been dealing with that. It was just on appearances, right? That's how people usually judge those things.
Yeah.
And I have dark skin, and curly hair, and that was enough for them to treat me like that.
Where did you go for safety emotionally during that time in the small, which town was it?
Mooseman.
Oh yeah, right, in Mooseman. I mean, how'd you deal with that?
I got pretty thick-skinned very early. I would run home and cry. I'll never forget the first time anyone called me that, and I got beat up by these boys. It was probably this was in Minot. Because at some point, my mom, she didn't move directly back to Regina. She moved back to Minot, where they have a military base there, so she could access those military services still, and was going to university. So we spent 4 years there, and during that time was some of the first times that I ever started to experience it. But I was always very close with my mother, so she was a riot. I think back on that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she could not get away with that today. But I would usually tell her. I'd go home crying and tell my mom this horrible thing that had happened to me. And she would turn around and take me out to the park and make me show her where those kids were. And she would go up and yell at them and defend me. And, I would never forget the first time the little girl was black too. She was black, and my mom had those little girls crying. Oh my goodness! But they came to my birthday party, they apologized, and they never ever did it again. So I don't know whether that was a good or a bad, but I know nowadays she wouldn't have been able to get away with that. Right. She would have gotten, in a lot of trouble. But back then, that's how she used to handle it, and that was my only safety. I didn't really have a lot to protect me. She was my only protector, my only person in the world outside of this white family over here, where I knew I didn't quite fit. I was always different, but I didn't understand why. Because you have to remember, this is the 80s. They were talking melting pot. They were talking, everyone is the same. Everyone. We don't see color, right? That was kind of the way I was raised, was you don't even see color.
Right.
You can't, everyone is the same, where I know nowadays that you can't go there. You have to acknowledge that kind of thing. But back then, that's how it was. So for me to even think about my skin color was like, well, no, I don't. That's not how we talk nowadays. There's no color. Right. You're the same as me, and I'm the same as you. Right? When really.
Right. So there wasn't any pride in identity. Right.
No.
Let's just all be generic and the same. Except you didn't really stand a chance of being generic and the same because people were pegging you as different just based on the color of your skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And because of that, I think that added to my character in a lot of ways. I think it made me very strong. I can adapt into people's different situations. And I had to learn my identity at some point. So because of that, it makes it more meaningful. Like it wasn't just, don't take it for granted at all. It's very much a part of how I see and will view the world now, where once upon a time, I never understood. There was always this picture, and I have it up in my home now, but it's this beautiful picture of this Indian man with a beautiful headdress, red and green and yellow. And it's just like most of the pictures, this headdress. And it was always up on our walls. And I never understood why. I used to just stand at it and stare at it for hours. I remember doing that. And I never understood why it was there. Now I get it. My mom she was just as disconnected from her own culture as I was and was looking for it. And she wouldn't even bring it in to the world that I was in. I had no idea about this. So
why?
She didn't know it.
Okay.
She grew up from 5 years old up in a Norwegian family in Wovoda. She didn't know it. So, I mean, even when she was coming back and learning it, I mean, that's one of the things she studied at MSU was Native Studies was her minor. English major. So, yeah.
Did you stay in Saskatchewan after that? Did you leave Saskatchewan at any point?
Yes, I did.
Where did you go?
I went to Vancouver for a year. I was pursuing an acting degree or acting career in film. And at the time, it was filming. Vancouver was Hollywood North. But that just was... I had a hard time and didn't make it out there. So I ended up coming home. I won't go into detail about what happened over there, but let's just say it took me a long time to recover. But I look at myself as a success. And someday someday I'll be comfortable telling that story in completeness because wow, to come back from where I came back and then turn around and finish off my university degree and then just continue on with life the way I have that is a success story in itself. But like I said, it's sensitive where people judge on that kind of thing, you know?
And the more people I talk to and the more life I live, I realize that everybody has human experiences that are good and ugly. Nobody gets out of this life unscathed by, we all have demons, but I think the demons are the things that don't define us, but they certainly strengthen us.
Yeah, like I said, that was a big overcoming, and it took me about 2 years to recover back and get back to where I was before I left.
Right. When you came back here, what did you study?
English.
Okay.
I'm an English degree at the theater minor. I'd switched them. When I came back, I switched them back because I realized that acting and everything, I mean, I've been being judged on my appearance my whole life. I've gotten very, very good at being looked at and playing the roles that people want me to play. And, I get looked at all the time. I actually have a bubble up of, perception now. I've learned to, from a very young age, I don't even recognize what's happening around me sometimes because I know they're looking at me a lot of times I just have learned to not pay attention to that, right? Because if I paid attention every time people stared at me, I'd be all the time,
Well, in your mind, how do you think people are perceiving you? How do you think people see you?
I think they're curious, first of all, is one of the things is because I look different. I don't look First Nations and I don't quite look Black. So I think I get that question a lot. Actually, I got it just the other day from the guy at the food court at Triffon's Pizza. What nationalities are you? Like I get that question all the time. And then, I mean, not to toot my own horn or anything, but, I believe that I am a beautiful woman.
You are.
And I think that's what they're looking at. That and my, I'm just getting looked at. Yeah. Are they judging sometimes? Sometimes I'm getting followed in the store still, Sometimes they're gunning off. Sometimes they're just looking because I'm different. It's just because I'm different.
Do you find that question incredibly intrusive, or is there a part of me that wants to say, what gives you the right to ask me such a thing? Or do you feel like it's a cool thing for you to bring people in on?
No, I don't mind at all. I've been asked that a lot in my life, and I prefer people ask and just assume, because then they would never know that I'm First Nations. They would think that I'm a Black woman off the hop, where that's not necessarily what I identify with, because I know very little about what it is to be a Black woman. I didn't grow up around them. So,
Do you maintain contact with your dad?
I do.
Have you been he's still in Jamaica?
No, he's in Atlanta.
Oh, he's in Atlanta.
Yeah, he's in Atlanta.
Okay.
I have two brothers. He has a wife over there. He's had a new family over there for 20-something.
But have you had the opportunity to sort of connect with, for the lack of a better word, your Blackness, your Black heritage?
I tried. I went through a little bit of like a crisis of identity after my mom passed away, because I lost my main connection back to my family, right? And I'm like, oh. And I started to wonder about them. So I went down after that, and I spent, a few weeks with my family down there, and it was wonderful. It was great. We're not the same at all culturally. I'll never, ever be the same as they are culturally. That became evident. But just to know that there was another group of people out there that loved me and had my back like that, because, there's never a love like the love of a parent, right? Like that unconditional love. So that's kind of what I was seeking out in my journey down there, as well as a connection to my roots there that I know nothing about, being a Jamaican.
How were you perceived there? I mean, what was your sense of the way people looked at you there?
Oh, I was just another Black girl.
So they saw you as being Black. They didn't have any kind of crisis of, what is this girl? What an odd mix.
Not at all.
Huh.
And actually, that place was like, I've never seen anything like Atlanta before. It was just all Black people. I was like, oh, is there any white people around here? Like, I've never seen where the white person would have been the minority. I've never seen anything like that. So it was very different than anything. And they were very accepting. But my dad, it was funny because, he wasn't as accepting. Like, he could still judge people. So, for example, we're at this one outdoor concert in the park, and I'm dressed as hot. I'm dressed in shorts. I think a short dress, and it's fun. We're hot, and some man was really like gawking at me, kind of being awkward around me, and everything like this. My dad was not having it for a second. Even though, regardless of color, whatever, it didn't matter. He went and found security and had him escorted out. He wasn't even messing around at all, which is really kind of cool, because I've never had a father figure that would, defend me like that, and would go and get someone kicked out for looking at me. I'm like, well, that happens all the time, Dad. What do you mean?
Right.
Why are you?
And was that person Black that was looking at you?
Yeah, it was. The whole park was filled with thousands of Black. There wasn't even a white person anywhere near this. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it.
We all know that the Black culture has tremendous stories of discrimination. How do you, in that moment, what's your perception of somebody who is so subject to discrimination themselves, then seeing you as different? Is there a part of you that wants to say, of all people that should judge, who do you think you are?
Well, I think that I don't think that was there. I don't think that tone was underlying anywhere in this. I think it was, this guy's just a creep.
Okay.
And he needs to go, regardless of his color, right? Like, I don't think color was, that's why I say, I think it's kind of like how First Nations people look at First Nations people. It's like, okay, that guy's a jerk. You know what I mean? And I'm still I'm gonna get him escorted out of here if he's gonna be a jerk. I don't care what color he is, right? So I don't think my dad was coming from it from that place. It was just trying to protect his daughter from some perv.
Right. Okay, all right, fair enough. How does the First Nations community sees you as Indigenous? Do they see the blackness in you?
It depends on who it is. I find that most people are very, very accepting of me. My family is open arms accepted. I'm not even the only one who's half black in my family. Right. I have another 2 cousins who are in the same boat as me. So there's no discrimination coming from the family at all. In fact, there seems to be more of a drive to bring us in, actually, and protect us and not lose us off to the black people. Now, in terms of the bigger community, I've had some issues. I've had some problems, you know. For example, you know, when I go into a community, a First Nations community, a lot of times they won't see that I'm First Nations right off hop. And then they're like, what's this woman doing here? Why is she, you know, and once they find out, everything changes. But they have to find that out. It's not evident. I don't know why, but it's just not to some. But yet, I'll never forget this moment when I was probably about 16, riding on the buses here in town here, and this First Nations man approaches me and he says, "So, what reserve are you from?" And I was blown away. I was like, "What? How did you know? How did you know?" And he was just able to identify me right away, pick me out like that. So it varies. It varies depending on where I was. If I'm up north, they generally don't tend to see a lot of this. Half black, half First Nations. Down south here, there's a lot more of that. So it's... And I grew up here. I've been here since I was 14, 15 years old. I've been establishing myself as part of this Indigenous community for, 20 years or so.
What do you? So, what's your thought on the general feeling of mixed backgrounds within First Nations community? I mean, if somebody nowadays marries someone from a different ethnicity, as she breathes deeply, how is that perceived?
I think it varies. I think it does. I think, again, it's a personal thing per family. But I think overall there is an acceptance of it. I don't think there is you guys are out anymore. Anymore. Notice I say anymore. Because, the Métis people's story is quite well known. And they're the originators of the half and half. So, and they were treated very poorly. Down here, like I noticed there's such a difference between North and South Saskatchewan. It's really like night and day. Up north, they're just part of they're just their cousins. They never really lost their connections back to their First Nations communities. Where down here, everyone got removed. Like they are as connected as much, it seems. They don't know what home community they were from or where their family is. They just know that they are, Métis. So in terms of the community's acceptance of it, I don't think people really talk about it very much. I've been called, there's little kids who called me names and things like this. They call me the N-word. They've called me, I've gotten harassment and racism from the First Nations community. But they're young, usually very young, very ignorant, very, uneducated and, looking for a way to attack someone, but using race as a way to do it. That I find that young people tend to do that type of thing a little bit more so than...
Right. Do you have a reaction to that or you just ignore it?
I usually ignore at this point. Yeah. I think once upon a time in my younger years, I wasn't so ignoring of those types of things. And, I'm still constantly been this shift in First Nations country that's just, it's driving me insane with the youth where they feel it's okay to call each other the N-word. They're using it on Facebook. They're using it all over the place. I just won't. I can't handle it. That's one where I'll be like, we will have words. We're gonna have some words.
But that's not a word one associates with First Nations communities.
But
generally.
they're calling themselves that. Yeah.
Well, that just must have something to do with the influence of pop culture or music or something.
Yeah. It
As in a generic term, I mean, people would say things like, "Oh, that's so gay." I mean, gays come into the vernacular as something completely different, as in so lame.
Yeah.
Yet somehow there is always, if you go back far enough, you'll find a negative connotation in it. I mean, it's never used positively. Right?
Yeah. No, not since back in the 40s.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
The years I remember.
Right. So, can you remember when you first started delving into your First Nations heritage? What spoke to you most powerfully? What did you connect with first?
Oh my goodness. It was gradual. It wasn't like I said, as my mom came to know her own traditions and reestablished, she brought me along with her.
Okay.
So it wasn't like one day we're here, one day we're there. It was very, very gradual. It happened over a number of years where I'd seen my first powwow. And she was making her first outfits, and she was taking me to ceremonies. And, so it just happened slowly but surely over the years. And then, I mean, when I was in my early 20s and stuff, I wasn't culturally relating to anything. I was just like doing my own thing, back to like non-cultural at all, non-association with anything like that. You
just were, and was that conscious? Did you just...
No, it just happened. It just happened. And then slowly but surely, and I don't know when this happened or how this even started to happen, but I just started to go there more and more and more until, I don't even know when this happened, Kevin, and it kind of freaked me out at one point when I realized that out of my whole friends list of over 900 some people, there were maybe 10 non-Indigenous people. I was like, when did this happen? How did this happen? I feel like I've gone the exact opposite, because I went to schools where I was the only brown person, or it was like, me and one other person, or, I was never at the brown schools. But then I did end up going to some of those schools, and I think that started to switch it over. Going to First Nations University started to switch it over, and being in those classes, making those connections with my cousins and starting to hang out with them and making that choice, as opposed to, when you're forced as family get-togethers. I was making those choices to be friends with my cousins. And yeah, it just slowly kind of happened over the years that this became my comfort zone, because I'm comfortable here. I feel good, to be a part of my community. It feels right. It's something my mom fought for a long time, and she didn't get at those ages that I did,
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Just a reminder that there are several ways that you can listen to all of the SaskScapes episodes. The easiest way is with the SaskScapes app that you can download for free from the App Store or Google Play, depending on your device. You'll even get notifications when a new episode is available. Other ways to hear the podcasts are downloading them from the iTunes Store, Stitcher Radio, or through the TuneIn Radio app. Again, all for free. You can stream the SaskScapes podcasts individually at www.iheartculture.ca. Thanks to all of you who have been writing your comments and reviews. It's always great to hear from you. And now, back to the podcast. Do you recall a time during all of this shifting and perception and other people's perceptions of you? Was there a time in your life where you just thought, I just wish I were generic? Like, I wish I could just make all this go away?
and just be a person. Yeah. I mean, that's how I was raised for most of my childhood, was not even to see color,
Right.
until other people started to judge me on color did I even recognize that that was a thing. So yeah, every now and then I do, but then, boy, I just love my culture. Oh, I just love my indigenous culture. I just think it's such a beautiful one, and I like what it's done to my personality and my perspective on the world.
What has it done to your personality?
I've become a calmer person, a lot more forgiving person, a person who believes that things happen for a reason. That there's a higher role here. I've learned that nothing good can come unless you sacrifice things for it. Things aren't just handed to you, that you have to sacrifice for things good to come your way. The power of prayer, the power of community. There's so many positives. The connection to the land, it's a fabulous culture. I know I never understood after learning all of this how anyone could hate us.
You were really involved with the Indigenous Games last year.
Yeah.
That must have been just not from the role you played administratively, but as a participant. It must have felt fantastic to be among all that energy.
Oh, it was so great to see all those kids coming together like that. I hope that some little lives were changed. Sure they are, every nag.
Yeah.
Someone gets a life changer out of it. And just to see all those different cultures coming together. At the end of the week, we did the closing ceremonies, and we had a tribe called Red, who, I don't know if you're aware of who they are. They're taking over an international level with their powwow electronic music mixing. So it's a very unique sound. They've modernized the indigenous sound and brought it into a contemporary world.
Wow.
So at this point, like they're very mainstream. I think they won a Juno. They've won,
Oh, yeah. Did they win the Polaris?
I think they did. Yep.
Yes. This is all starting to make sense now.
Their witness is their
right. Yeah.
one of their guys,
Okay.
and they're just like they're taking over, right? And they're activists, so their songs are not just like fluff. They have messages in them. They have so they're great. So we brought these guys in for the closing ceremonies. It was a big deal. I've never seen so many spontaneous round dances happening in an audience before. You'd look over here, these guys are round dancing around. Oh, there's another one going over there. There's another one over there. It was just beautiful because everyone was from different cultures. Everyone was from different, backgrounds. Yeah, we're indigenous, but there's so many differences between, someone from Florida than someone here, someone from New York than someone here. There's a lot of differences in the way we do things, a lot of commonalities. But what I had to learn as I negotiated this space, because as the cultural manager, I had to figure out a way to blend all of these cultures together in a way that was respectful, was to focus on the commonalities, and the things that we had in common, which was the earth. And there were certain things that we all did the same. So we would just focus on those types of things and what we all loved and, not pay attention to the differences necessarily.
Is there a part of you that kind of wishes that your dad would come up and take some of this in with you?
He has.
He has?
Yeah, he came up for my university convocation in 2008. That was the first time I'd seen my dad in 12 or more years. I hadn't seen him since I was a little girl. And we had a sweat. For my convocation, and he came into that, and he still has a little smudge. He found a place where he could get sweetgrass and sage in Atlanta, and he still does a little bit of smudging in his own home after that. And he was completely accepting of our culture. That was never, I think, a wedge between him and my mom or anything like that.
So, that's great.
Other than his family.
Was there anything that he exposed you to within his culture that you thought was kind of cool?
Oh my gosh, their food is great.
Yeah.
Their food was great. I was like, plantains or eating all that. They made them take me to like, I'm like, I need to go eat some collard greens, some fried chicken and mac and cheese. We're in the South. I need to have that. I need to have some, and they made sure to show me those things because they knew I'm interested in that and would want to. And then we spent a number of time. One of the most powerful experiences I had down there was when we went to Martin Luther King Jr.'s neighborhood. That whole neighborhood is now preserved, where you can go to his childhood home, the church, and then there's this huge museum. And at that point, when we were touring all of this and going through all of these things, this civil rights movement history, and really living it, like walking down the streets that these guys like were on, and the church he was like preaching at, it was really powerful. In his grave, we were in front of his grave there, and got to pay our respects. What I couldn't help but leave, was the fact that I feel like, and this is a little controversial, I know, but I feel like what they did down there almost needs to happen up here. Like I was excited. It was around Idle No More too when I was down there to around that time. Right. So it's like, maybe we're finally, I know that happened back in the 1960s for them down there, but maybe that's starting to happen up here. I realize now that the major difference that they have is geography, where we're all so scattered across the country that for us to come together and unite like that is like very, very difficult. But down there, they have a better opportunity to do that. But I learned some things that we can bring up here, and it's that we can't stop fighting. We can't stop fighting for change. Fighting for change. I don't want to say fighting. I want to say...
No, I know what you mean.
Fighting for change. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I'd like to think that this federal election that we've just gone through and the record-setting number of First Nations people that came out, the Indigenous vote was huge. Yeah. I think the highest number of Indigenous candidates were voted in. Yeah. Ever. Yeah. So hopefully that's a good sign. Hopefully the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is our steps forward.
I'm hoping that they are as well. I think there's going to be, I don't know. But like I said, all it took down there was Rosa Parks on a bus, right? Like one little thing like that just flipped the whole thing. So I feel like we're getting, like the tensions are rising. I'm hoping that this new government brings some changes.
Do you think there needs to be a change of mindset within the community, of the Indigenous community itself, as far as its self-definition, as far as its value and its worth? Or do you still feel like there's a general feeling of less than that exists within the community?
Yeah. I mean...
Don't you have to accept yourself before you get others to accept you, to be perfectly cliche?
I mean, yeah, but I mean, we're not there yet. We're still coming back out of this. I mean, everyone wants to say this happened so long ago. I almost went to residential school. I had a choice, but I was this close, at one point.
How did that happen?
I was a rebellious teenager, and so I was almost shipped away to go and be locked up at school to make me go.
Who was behind
my mother
making that? Your mom. Mm-hmm. That's interesting because she was rebellious herself. Mm-hmm. So she obviously thought that might be the only thing to bring you on the straight and narrow.
Well, it was a threat. It was a threat. Right. It's either you could behave right and go back to school and do what you need to be doing, or you're going to go to residential school. Either way, the police are involved because you have to go to school. And it's my responsibility.
Do you think she really would have done that?
They gave me the option. You
knew what residential school was all about.
I didn't want to go. No.
Right.
No. Right. At that point, too, I wasn't really very connected to my First Nations community. So that would have been like a huge culture shock for me because I'm going to Sheldon over here
Right. Yeah.
And there's me and the other brown guy, or the other two brown guys, and that would have been a total whoa. Once I probably would have been a lot damaged by going there. So I made the choice myself to stay home. But mostly everyone else I know went. Most of my friends all went to residential school out in La Brea. I mean, it didn't close till 96. You know?
It's so hard to get your mind around that something so brutal could go on for that long.
Yeah.
It blows your mind.
So we're learning, we're getting our culture back. I'm watching it. I've already seen the change in the last, how many years. I've seen the switch over, the strength coming up, people reclaiming, reconnecting.
But it's also hard to let down your guard, and with the cultural genocide that's taken place within the First Nations community, within the Indigenous community, to forgive must just be huge.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, that's a toughie. I don't think a lot of people are there.
Did your mom forgive?
My mom turned very Buddhist Yen.
Oh, really?
by the end.
That's interesting. Okay.
By the ends of her life. Yeah,
Okay.
she was very... So, no, I'm pretty sure she let that all go and forgave. Because I asked her the question, I look at how damaged a lot of my relatives are who grew up on the reserve and where they're at and with their lives. And then I look at what my mom was able to do, where... going off, being the first woman in the U.S. military to have a crew, or Air Force to have a crew working underneath her, getting her education and her degrees and stuff, and then coming back and giving back to the community. I asked her one time, I'm like, do you think it was better that you were, where do you think you would be? How do you think this would have looked? And I got a slap immediately for even asking that question, because she's like, why would I have ever not wanted to be around my mother? Why would I have never wanted to be around my family? No, I would have rather have been home, regardless of how my life went and all these successes I've seen.
Really? That's quite something. All of those successes did not match her need to be
with her family. Yeah.
She did reconnect with her mom, her birth mom.
No, her mom passed away. That's why she was scooped.
Oh, that's why she was scooped.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why she was scooped, was because her mom got hit on the highway. They used to walk back and forth between White Bear and Carlisle there on that highway lots. So when I did the Lance run, I made sure to bring it down that highway to kind of bring a blessing to that road, because there's been so many. My grandmother was just one of many, because there weren't cars back then. They used to have to walk to town if they wanted stuff, and it's a good 10, 15 miles. They'd walk back and forth, and lots of deaths, lots of people died on that highway. So
Did she know her birth father?
No. Big questions around that.
Okay.
People don't. I don't know why. No one. There's theories, but nothing confirmed. Right. And I don't know why it was hidden. I think it died with my grandmother back in 1960, 61.
But with a tumultuous background that she had, she was a remarkable person to have had all those accomplishments that she had. I can see why you would have asked her that question.
Yeah, but I think she was trying to prove something. I think at some point it wasn't, you know what I mean, where she was trying to prove something to her adoptive family that she was good enough. I think that was part of the driving force behind.
And of course, you wound up not having anything to do with them anyway in the long run, so who cared, right?
Yeah. That's exactly it.
When did you lose your mom?
2011. So it's been 4 years in October.
Right.
Just like a few weeks ago, we had a memorial for her. Yeah.
Was your dad there?
No. He's in Atlanta, so that's not very convenient.
But I mean, were they completely estranged?
No. Oh my goodness. When my dad came up here, Oh, I was born from love. If I ever had any questions about that.
Really? That's good to know.
They were just like, they forgot about me half the time. Oh. They were too busy visiting and you just could sense that there was this deep connection and love. Like it was never about, I think, that for them and why they weren't together. I think my mom had her issues with the scoop and me and wanting to protect me, my dad with his family, and Jamaican families can be kind of overbearing a bit, Right. So they had external forces.
But they were both there for your convocation.
Yeah.
That must have felt great. It
was wonderful. Oh,
and she must have been really proud of you for having gone from someone that she was threatening to send to residential school to finally having accomplished something.
Yeah, she was very, very proud of me. Yeah, and everything I've done, and I grew up,
Yeah. Where did you get the theatrical interest? Where did the artistic side of you come from?
I always liked performing. I started dancing at the age of 5 in the ballet classes because my mom was a working single mom. So she would put me in things to keep me busy. And I loved Michael Jackson. And I loved dancing. So I started dancing. And then, that morphed into, there's a community play. And I was thinking about this too. The first time I went to audition, I chickened out. I was like, I don't want to. I'm like 6 or 7, I think I was. Yeah, I think it was about 7 or 8, actually. And she sat me down in the car. We're sitting in the car in front of there, and I'm like, I'm not going in. Nope. She's like, Dominga, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you go in there? They're going to say no to you. And if they say no, where will you be? You'll be still right here. In the exact same space that you are. So you might as well go out there and give it a try, and what's the worst that's going to happen? So I did, and I got a speaking role. Actually, one little line in Cinderella. I'll never forget it. I practiced it really hard.
What was your line?
I had to whisper loud. I had to do a theater whisper. So that took some practice, right? But I believe it had something to do with, I hear the king's looking for a new woman, or something along those lines. Where it's like it was at the very beginning where he's like trying to find a wife, and everyone's I'm this little it was. I look back at it fondly, anyways, and that was the start of my theater career, and then. I was always just always in performing arts, whether it was acting or singing or dancing or.
Is that what you wanted to be when you were growing up?
For the longest time, I wanted to be a dancer. Please keep in mind, we're in the 80s. And Paula Abdul was big, Janet Jackson's big, Michael Jackson's dancing, Madonna's dancing, everyone's dancing, right? Everything was dance. They were having tap dancers in the White House, like what the heck, right? So that's what I really wanted to be, was a dancer. But the dance system down in the States runs so differently from up here. So when we made the move from Minot to Regina, I wasn't able to switch over. It just didn't work. They were trying to put me in dance classes with little 5-year-olds. I'm like, I've been dancing since I was 5 years old. I'm 13 now, So, that kind of ended it for me and started my whole rebellion phase, really, when I didn't have that outlet anymore.
Right. If I were to hand you a magic wand and say you can be or do anything that you want, what would you like to wind up doing?
Oh, if I anything I wanted in the entire world, I would be an actor. I'd be acting in movies and Hollywood blockbusters, making bazillions of dollars a year.
But, all right, well, that's fair. I did give you a magic wand.
You did. I ran with it.
Okay, yeah, you did. You ran with it. But what's the 5-year, 10-year goal for you? I mean, you have such a unique perspective and background. What would you like to bring to the planet with all of this that you've learned?
Well, I'm still doing a lot of writing because that's one of the things that happened with my career and was always running alongside of it was my writing.
What are you writing?
I'm starting to write a documentary where I am going to be looking at, I want to do a comparison between the 60s scoop and the experiences of people back then and the social services system of today. Because I think there's a lot of commonalities between it, and I don't think that the 60s scoop is necessarily ended. So this would be my way of kind of shedding some light on that for people, and giving a voice to those folks who are going through this right now.
Well, maybe you could combine your love of film with that and become a documentarian.
My best friend is in film, so I'm like, I'll write the script. You'll help me make it. Because I don't know anything about film, but I can make a theater. I can do theater. So that's one of the things that I'm kind of working on right now on the side. And the other thing is I've just started a theater group.
Oh.
Just like 2 weeks ago.
And what's your vision for that? What do you want to focus on?
I was at all these conferences recently where I was hearing a lot of things about Indigenous actors and the lack of Indigenous actors in this country. And I thought, there are people who want to do this. We're just not being engaged, especially not in Regina. I mean, it's very hard even in Saskatoon. In this province, it's very difficult. So I thought, what the heck, we don't have to make this as hard as everyone's always trying to make things where you got to start an organization. We need to do all these things. I'm like, can't we just gather some people together? We pick a script and we do it. And we just have fun with this and just engage. And it's just very grassroots. No one's owning it. It's a collective type of beast, and we can get some training going on involved in there as well. So people are building those skills. And everyone is all I did was put up a Facebook post and ask if people were interested. And this thing just,
that's great.
It's taken off. So we'll see. We're going to take on Res Sisters. We're going to do Res Sisters as our first one, and we're going to get some people in there training. And I don't know what it's going to be at the end of it all. I'm just I did it for two reasons. First of all, from what I said with the lack of Indigenous actors, and I did it for myself. Because, as an Indigenous person, I'm limited. I'm like, well, let me just create my own then, someplace where I can go and play and pick a role and run with it and rehearse lines and act again, because I miss it. So,
what would you say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. What would you say to some little kid out there in small town Saskatchewan who is pegged as being different by their peers? How do you find that inner strength?
I stopped trying to be different, or stopped trying to not be different a long time ago. I embraced my differentness and was like, well, okay, I don't want to be like everybody else. You can look at me as you want to, however you want to, but internally I'm okay with who I am. I like who I am, and that's who I'm going to be. That's just who it is. So, yeah, it's just embrace yourself, and kind of embrace your differences, because who wants to be the same as everyone else? That's super boring. And if you're going to be different, might as well go for it. Might as well embrace it and run with it. It's never taken me in a wrong direction, It's how I ended up in acting. It's how I ended up in dancing. It's how I ended up in all of those things, and kind of how I ended up with my view on the world, was because it was always different. Again, my mom was always that one. She had such an influence on my life. I keep referring back to her, but it really was. She formed me as a person, and I was this typical preteen who was like, they had these little buckle-up jeans, these little lock jeans with the key back there. I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was.
Chastity belt built into jeans.
If everyone had them. And if you lost your key, you were in trouble. And I remember trying to get these kind of clothes, and my mom was like, no, you like this? Wear it. You want to wear your polka dot leggings with your red baby doll dress over top? Go for it. Just quit trying to dress like everyone else. That was one thing. Yeah. She wouldn't even really allow me to buy those kinds of clothes. And that I was always the other. I lived in white Minot. I lived on white Air Force bases. I was always the other. So you just learn to kind of, I was an internal. I'm still like a loner bee, you know. I can sit in a room. I used to be able to, as a child, sit in a room by myself for hours entertaining myself. No problem. Because I didn't have any siblings my age or anyone. So I was alone. So because of those things, I wrote stories. I remember writing my first play at the age of 4 or grade 4 when I learned what a play was. You know, like that's what I would go home and do after school.
Right. But I should say, because this is an audio podcast, and other than the picture that I'll attach to the podcast, people can't see you, but lest we make it sound like you appear as an alien, you are, we've been talking about these two cultures that you come from, but I mean, you when I met you, it didn't strike me either way, to be honest. In fact, just because of the name Dominga, I thought maybe there was some kind of Spanish influence or something like that. Like I could see that, but I certainly wouldn't have. I certainly would have had an adverse reaction, to the point where I would say, "My God, what must her background be? What an odd look." I mean, certainly nothing like that.
No,
it blows my mind that people have had these such huge reactions to.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep, I have. There's this one time in Minot, I saw these 4 boys trying to ride on one bike. And even back then I was like, okay, I'm walking faster than you guys are riding. And I started to laugh. Right? Because I'm like, really, I'm walking fast. I'm like passing you. If you guys just got off and walked your bike, you'd probably get there.
Right.
That was the first time I got called the N-word. They came up and like were so mad that I was laughing at them. They beat me up and called me the N-word. And I don't know why that story just came up right now. But yeah, that's one where they judged me initially right away on my skin color. It's always been about that. It's always been about that. So
the human race is very, very strange how people perceive. Well,
you just learn to let it roll off you.
It's obviously made you stronger.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does. You know, it gives you this, you have to know who you were from that, because they're going to say you're all these things, but it's like, no, I'm not that. I'm this, and I know, and you're ignorant, and I'm not going to deal with you. So, you know, and I'm not going to, but I work in a place where I want to, and I'm trying to change minds. So, you know, I got to have those conversations too sometimes with people, you know, to try to get them to understand. But it's a tough fight. I think, especially in the prairies, you know, it's hard to not ignore the fact that we're in a sea of blue.
Right. No kidding.
We're in the Bible Belt of Canada. Is that what they're calling us now?
Really?
Yeah, they are. Because it proceeds still up from the States as Bible Belt.
Great. Well, not all of us.
No, not all of us. Exactly. We're fighting for those changes.
Right.
You know. Right. So just keep fighting that good fight.
Thanks for hanging out with me.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. All over the place, I know.
Hey, thanks for listening. The SaskScapes podcast is created and hosted by Kevin Power for SaskCulture. Funding to the cultural sector is provided through the Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for Sport, Culture and Recreation. For more information, visit iheartculture.ca and saskculture.ca. You can follow us on Twitter @SaskScapes and @KevinPowerLive. Music for SaskScapes is provided by Saskatchewan-born singer-songwriter Jeffrey Straker. These are our stories, Saskatchewan, and they have no end. So tell me, what's yours?